I'm hoping to go to a powwow next weekend, and I need to make an adjustment to my regalia because, well, I'm getting older. This is a Woodlands roach, one of several styles. It was made for me many years ago by a lady in West Virginia, and up until now it's been worn pinned to the back of my head, my scalp, by a braid of my hair with a rib bone pin through it. And the problem is that as a non-native white guy, I'm going bald in the back of my head, and my wife is finding it harder and harder to make a braid that I can use to pin this on. So I want to make an adjustment, in a manner of speaking, to how this is put on the back of my head, because it's still important to me. This is a coyote skin headdress that I made a long time ago, for at a different time for a different reason. It's a full coyote skin. I don't particularly want to cut it, so I'm going to just use it as it is, with some modifications. And what I want to do is change the headdress so that it's a little bit more appropriate for a woodland style regalia. This has got some issues, and I want to attach the woodland roach to the top of the crown piece in place of my braid. And you can see that it's got some faux hawk feathers attached to it that I attached at some point in time a long time ago. We're going to replace those with turkey tail feathers that I recently salvaged from a friend's backyard. He has a herd of turkeys that come and hang out at his bird feeder, and I think he feeds them peanuts or something like that. Anyway, they leave him lots and lots of feathers, and so I took some of them with his permission, and we're going to use some for this project. So the first thing we need to do is to prepare these feathers to make them into, to make them in such a way that we can attach them to the headdress in the two ways that I spoke of. And I'm going to use a traditional method of preparing the feathers. I could just use the shafts the way they are, but actually, from what I can tell, the appropriate way to do it is to cut the shaft and fold it back to make a loop that you can use to attach the leather thong. And I've got a razor knife. You know, in the old days it probably would have been an obsidian knife. Obsidian is incredibly sharp and actually can be used for surgical incisions. But we're going to just use your regular X-Acto razor knife for this project. Let's see if I can get this to fold back. That may not actually work. I'm sure I've done this with other feathers, but this isn't happening. Well, it's a fold of sorts. It wasn't quite what I had in mind, but you fold it back, tuck it into the shaft behind, if you can. And then we'll take a piece of red wool and we'll wrap it around the shaft to create a decorative thing and to kind of hold everything in place. And then we'll put a leather thong through the loop, and we'll use that to attach to the various points on the headdress. So we've trimmed some of the fluff off of the shaft of the feather. We have 4 pieces of red felt, wool felt, that we're going to use. And I'm going to use some of this tacky glue. Within a week I will have hide glue, which would have been the more authentic or appropriate choice, but we're kind of on a deadline here, so we're going to use what we've got. And we'll just wrap the felt around the shaft of the feather as such. Put a little more on this edge of the felt here to keep everything in place. Take a piece of sinew and tie it around there to give it, again, a slightly more authentic look, I suppose you could say. Artificial sinew, of course. Again, I could use real sinew. I actually have some someplace, but it's just as easy to use this artificial stuff for what we're doing. And do another one on the back. Again, this is kind of a traditional look. Honestly, I borrowed a lot of these feather techniques, I guess, from the Lakota. Things I've seen about how they make their feathered headdresses, which is not necessarily have any bearing on what we're doing, I mean, on woodland headdresses. In fact, I can't say with absolute, authenticity that the headdress that I'm repurposing is going to end up being a typical Woodlands headdress. The Woodlands roach that sits on top of it will be authentic and appropriate in this, but sinew is sticky, and the glue is sticky, and they're making my fingers sticky. But we'll get it. Putting the knot on the opposite side of the feather from the previous one. I like symmetry. I like things to be the same. Move the knot to the other side so it matches. And that pretty much finishes the feather. You can clip the ends off of the sinew to neaten that up. I'll probably put a spot of glue on them before the powwow, but I'll try to hold out for my hide glue. I like to use as appropriate materials as I can to stay traditional, even though this is native style crafting, since I am not by blood a Native American, and therefore by law cannot call this Native American crafting or Native American art. But that's a finished feather, and we're going to use that I believe on the back of the headdress. I think this is one of the feathers I chose as a pair to replace those two imitation hawk feathers I showed you earlier. But that is a finished feather. Okay, what we ended up with actually was I took two metal beads that I believe were repurposed from a choker at some point in time. I don't recall now. They were just in my bag of tricks, and we strung them onto the thong along with the two feathers and the roach pin, and knotted them off. Again, we'll probably trim the excess off of the ends of the knots and tack everything in place with the hide glue once I have it, and we'll go from there. But this should make a dandy roach pin for the headdress. And finally, the bonus. This is a turkey wing spike that we found at near a customer's residence just the other day, and it looks like it would make a really neat quill pin. So we're going to quickly make a point, or cut a nib on the feather to make a quill pin. You'll note this is very similar to what we were doing to fold the feathers over and make them usable for our project, and it is very much the similar. Actually, just for the interest of trivia, the term penknife came from this process. This was what you used to have to do to make a writing implement, which is what we're attempting to emulate here. And so we're using our X-Acto knife in the place of a penknife, but you would get the same results. And it looks like that would be a reasonably good nib for a pen, a quill pen. So I will join it with my ink pot at a later time. And we'll see you a little further down the path.